Alright, so today was the 2011 Chinese Grand Prix, and it was amazing. The start was pretty interesting. Vettel got passed by both Hamilton and Button, which was pretty neat. And then there was squabbling. There was squabbling the entire race. They were always fighting for position. It wasn't one of those where they settled into a long run and people were just kind of holding station. They were fighting constantly. It was really awesome. Vettel put up a really good fight. The thing is, there were some of them that were on 2-stop strategy, some were on 3 stops. So you'd see, somebody would start to pull out a lead, and then they'd have to pit. And then, so somebody else would take over, but then they would get challenged by somebody who was on fresher tires. And then they'd end up pitting. It was back and forth like crazy. Some of the big movers were Michael Schumacher, qualified 14th, finished 8th. And the drive of the day for me, other than there were a bunch of drives of the day. It was that kind of race, but Mark Webber started 18th, ended up 3rd. And he really did it in the second half of the race. The first half of the race was really ordinary. He really wasn't passing. He was started on the harder tires, and so it's about a second a lap around the Chinese circuit, and wasn't really expecting him to be at the back of the field for as long as he was. And then, of course, the commentators were saying maybe the team made the wrong choice. Maybe they should have started him out on soft tires so he could push hard at first. But then towards the end of the race, it started all coming together. He just kept steadily passing cars and making good moves. And I think the DRS system here didn't work as well as it has at other races. The DRS is, of course, the movable rear wing, where, for if you're within 1 second of the car that's ahead of you, then you get to open up your wing on the straights, and therefore reduces the drag and increases your top speed. And what they really needed to do was increase the area in which you were able to use the wing, because what we found was that coming out of the turn before the DRS zone, basically you weren't allowed to activate your wing to almost halfway down the straight. And for a lot of cars, by the time they got it opened, that enabled them to close the gap, but that didn't enable any passing. Which kind of defeats the whole purpose, in my mind, of DRS. DRS is supposed to be kind of a passing, enabling tool, and in this case, it really just kind of helped them close the gap. But the overtaking was, they were overtaking everywhere. It was great. It was great watching Michael Schumacher kind of battle back and forth, and then the big surge towards the end of the race. Nico Rosberg put in a great performance. At one time he was leading the race, and then the McLarens and the Red Bulls, Sebastian Vettel got back ahead. But Nico Rosberg, I think, ended up finishing 5th. Pull up my standings. Yeah, Nico Rosberg was 5th. So he started 4th, ended up 5th. I was very impressed. He, of course, would have liked to have been on the podium, and at one point it looked like he was going to finish on the podium. But I think he can be very proud of 5th. It was a very good run. He did much better than Michael Schumacher. Although their fastest lap times weren't that far off. So I'm not sure if Michael's having the biggest problem in qualifying or passing speed. It's there. And I was pretty disappointed in the Renaults of Petrov and Heidfeld. I felt like they had a much faster car. Trying to look at, Heidfeld moved up 4 spots from where he qualified. Vitaly Petrov moved up 1. The Renault was a really fast car in a straight line. I'm just not sure if the balance wasn't there or what the deal was, but hopefully they'll get their act together for Turkey, which is the next race. It's in 3 weeks. But the Hamilton had a great race. With 4 laps to go, his tires were 7 laps younger than the Vettel's, so he had more grip. And so you could just see him working his way up, kind of feeling in the last 5 or 6 laps. and then with 4 laps to go, he passed Vettel, and that was that. But it was an amazing drive from everybody. I mean, Mark Webber did great, and I was really proud to see that Heikki Kovalainen finished 16th. So he finished, for those people who don't know, Team Lotus was one of the new teams last year, and they got a pretty good bump in managing to secure an engine deal with Renault, so they are now powered by Renault, whereas the other teams are powered by Cosworth. And Heikki Kovalainen finished 16th after qualifying 19th. He finished ahead of Sergio Perez, who had a few errors in this race. And he also finished ahead of Pastor Maldonado in the Williams. So, good things there from Heikki Kovalainen and Team Lotus. I'm glad to see them start to kind of push up towards the front. I don't think it's going to be that long before they're challenging, Toro Rossos and the Force Indias. I mean, it's looking really good. So congrats to Heikki. But great race there. The championship is now, a little bit more even. Vettel still leads over Lewis Hamilton, but it's not by the same spread it was before. So great race there. No big accidents. There were a few clipped wings and such. There were a few mistakes, perhaps. Jenson Button, when he came in for his pit stop, he was coming in, and then I think it was a Red Bull. I think Vettel was right behind him. It had to have been Vettel. It couldn't have been Webber. Webber was too far behind. And Jenson, instead of pulling into his pit box, he drove straight through pit lane. The Red Bull pit box was first. I think there was a blank, somebody else's pit box, and then McLaren. And Jenson went through the Red Bull pit box, kind of slowed down, almost came to a stop, and then I guess realized he was in the wrong pit box, and then pulled forward into his pit box. So that was pretty weird. He definitely lost some time there, and that could have even been third place, because he was only 2.5 seconds behind Mark Webber, and he probably lost that much in the pit stop. So Jenson Button, possibly an error there. And Red Bull's got to figure out what's going on with KERS. In 2009, the last year, we used KERS, and then we didn't use it, and then we're using it again. And they've got to figure out what's wrong with their KERS system, because Mark is having consistent problems. I think Sebastian's wasn't working towards the end of the race, and that's half of their electronic aids as far as overtaking and passing tools and defending. I mean, DRS only works as a passing tool because it only works when you're within a second of a car that's ahead. So unless you've got 3 cars lined up, if you're getting ready to get past, you don't have that to use. But KERS is very important for getting off the line at the start, getting out of higher speed corners and getting boost onto straights. I mean, KERS is very important. So as much as Adrian Newey can design the hell out of a car, their engineers have got to get KERS working. Because McLaren's showing real pace. They're showing really good pace, and Mercedes in the form of Nico Rosberg, Renault with Petrov and Heidfeld, depending on what weekend it is, they can all challenge for podium positions. So, Red Bull, especially as development gets on, they've got a little break here, a few weeks break, where they really need to be focusing on engineering the hell out of their KERS system so that it's reliable, that the boys, are able to use it consistently throughout races, because I think that's gonna be a major difficulty for them moving forward if they can't get that fixed. But overall, great race. I mean, you don't have many races where, well, at least in previous seasons, we haven't had races where you're battling from start to finish. And it was good to see that it wasn't, Red Bull domination all the way. I mean, yes, they were second and third, but the truth is that the Pirelli tires showed that, when strategies are different, different cars are going to be able to run better in different situations, and Red Bull's not going to just be able to walk all over everybody. So I was very thrilled, and I'll see you guys in a couple weeks or 3 weeks in Turkey.